In this clip, I'll demonstrate how you can record and edit track mute automation on the MPC 4000. This is something I stumbled across in the manual, where the manual doesn't really describe it all that accurately and more or less gets it wrong. So I'm guessing a typo slipped through the final proofreading stage of the manual. And then there's also a relative feature that doesn't accurately describe what it's doing either. So with this clip, I thought I'd try to shine some light on what's actually going on to help you get a clearer picture of exactly how this feature works. Because once I figured it out, I was in love with it, and I'm sure many of you will be too. For best viewing, I recommend watching the clip on a larger display, such as a laptop, desktop, TV, etc. Put the clip in full screen mode and set the resolution to 1080p via the settings widget down on the bottom right. If you enjoy the clip, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, feel free to share, and if you're after sample packs, then check out store.tonelab.au, where you'll find sample packs ready to play in your sampler's native format. Last of all, if you need drum machine and sampler lessons or other studio services, you can book one-on-one remote sessions. Check the description below for details. With the promo out of the way, there's a cool trick that I think most MPC 4000 owners would probably like to know about, and that is having the ability to record track mutes, which comes in handy if you're wanting to record a performance of yourself muting specific tracks in a particular sequence. And so the pathway to this feature is via your main screen, then the track mute button. Once you're facing the track mute page, you can hold down overdub or record and press play or play start. And once you're rolling, you can then engage and disengage any of the track mutes by tapping on its relative pad. However, a few things worth mentioning are facing the track mute page allows you to record track mutes only. You'll have to stop the sequencer and return to the main screen for all other recording operations to continue. Secondly, these track mute automation events aren't stored in the common area that one may expect to find under Step Edit, but rather in their own unique global track event list that you can access via the Edit soft key here. In here, you'll see the times of each track mute event in sequential order down the timeline of the currently selected sequence. Having said that, you can, however, toggle the view to display track mutes from all tracks in this particular sequence to any one specific track of your choice. You can also navigate through the list of track mutes by using your cursor buttons and hitting the delete or insert soft keys to remove or manually add a track mute event. Alternatively, you can use the step and bar buttons to jump forward or backwards through your sequence's timeline in specific measures based on your quantize value. Additionally, you can use the block cursor to jump up to the Now field, where you can use the data wheel to look up a specific sequence location to delete or insert your own mute event, which will be relative to the currently selected track. But while using the cursor keys and data wheel, you can change the origin of that mute to another track, or even switch it from a mute on to a mute off, or vice versa. So I guess, as a rule of thumb, you could consider the track mute page exclusively for playing, recording, and editing track mutes that pertain to each sequence. Having said that, if you want those recorded track mutes to play as intended via the main screen, the last piece of the puzzle is to enable track mute events, which is hiding behind the mute element via the main screen. So cursor across to the mute field. Once highlighted, hit the window button, then toggle it to on using the data wheel. Then hit the close soft key and you're good to go. Effectively, you can also use this track mute toggle to enable or disable your track mutes entirely. But interestingly enough, another thing I found that doesn't get much of an explanation in the manual is this relatively innocent looking option here labeled Erase All Muted Tracks. Now, an option for erasing all muted tracks isn't all that exciting in my books. It's good, it can be useful, but there's more to this than meets the eye. And in fact, unless you know that this was responsible for doing something else, you probably wouldn't even bother using it with that particular label. Because what this feature and the manual aren't accurately describing is that the functionality of this feature changes without warning. Because once you've got some track mutes in your sequence, and then run this function by hitting the Do It Soft key, it actually doesn't erase all muted tracks, but rather it will only erase notes and other such MIDI events in those locations of where your track mute is on. And that then is something that I find a lot more useful than just a function for erasing all muted tracks. I guess it probably should have been labeled Erase All Muted Events maybe. Either way, perhaps you might like to consider it as just that. And I strongly encourage all 4,000 users to experiment with it, as it's offering something a lot more efficient for you than described. But getting back to the track mute page, I might just drop a word of caution. Be mindful of overdub versus overwrite record prior to recording track mutes. The reason being is that the track mute channel is a global track that spans all tracks pertaining to a single sequence. Therefore, it does have the ability to destructively clobber other mutes belonging to other tracks, which can be devastating or messy, even if you're using overdub record. So as a workaround, I suggest you back up your sequences by simply copying them to high number ranges. So for example, copy sequence 1 to sequence 21. Then you have 21 as a backup, or sequence 2 to 22, etc., etc. Last of all, it might be useful for you to know that these track mute events are contained inside the sequences themselves, and therefore are also saved along with your sequences when you save them singularly or as a batch inside the All Sequences and Songs file type. Anyway, that's all for this clip. I hope that's helped. If so, hit the like and subscribe buttons, check out the Instagram profile, and check out the previews of the ToneLab sample packs via store.tonelab.au. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.